Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Indiana-born jazz musician and writer Miro Sobrer. He talked about his new 2022 CD, Two of Swords, that recounts his struggle to find peace amidst conflicted feelings and thoughts after his father's death in 2015. He displayed an interest in music early in his childhood when he began singing to himself as a means of meditation and self-soothing. From there, he went on to the Jacob School of Music for classical and jazz trombone, as well as the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. He's got a very rich story. Enjoy this interview.
Nice to hear your voice, Joe. I'm doing all right. How are you?
Good. Everything's cool. Thanks for taking a minute out today.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
So before we get into your latest CD, Two of Swords, I want to know, how did you do as a musician through COVID, and how did it change you?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was pretty rough, as I think it was for many of us. Especially, I think there were kind of phases of it. Like at the beginning was just this massive state of shock. Like, oh my God, like everything is gone, and we have no idea, no sense of hope or outlook for the future. So then you're just kind of like, you feel kind of stranded, and like a lot of the music stuff is gone. And then eventually it kind of got to the point where it's like, okay, well, things are coming back slowly. Maybe, eventually we'll get back to playing for people and stuff. And that was kind of like the external part of it, I guess, just looking out into the world and, like what is happening around me. And then there was the internal part as well. And I think there was a lot of growth that happened there for me personally. I was actually, we all had so much time on our hands that we didn't normally have, I think. I had a ton of time. I was, before that I was working in a restaurant and playing gigs, and both of those things totally got wiped out. So I had all this time on my hands, and I think that really allowed me the opportunity to reflect on a lot of things and process a lot of things that I just was too busy to process and think about before, which was really beneficial for my mental health. It kind of took a while to get to that point, but once I did, it's really good. I felt like I was sort of processing my father's death more fully and had a chance to do that in a way that I hadn't had before, because it was always just like go before that. I was in school. There was always something keeping me busy. So this is the first time that I just had like an extended period of time where it's like I had nothing to do but kind of sit around with my thoughts and kind of work through some of those. So that was really beneficial for me, and also wrote a lot of music at that time, music which is yet to come out, but that'll be on my next project, which was also really wonderful experience to have so much time to write and delve into the creative process.
So I'm curious about the new album. Talk to me a little bit about the relief based on what we've all lived through, especially you as musicians. How relieving is it to have this album with the opportunity to have live music to back it up?
An incredible relief, absolutely. And just, so grateful for that. I remember playing my shows, the first few shows, and really the feeling has kind of stuck around since then, but after the pandemic and coming out and playing live shows again, I just feel this immense feeling of gratitude every time I play. Even if I'm playing for like 3 people, I'm just like, this is so great. I'm so happy to be sharing this with you, and I'm so glad that you are getting to experience this and you get to have that feeling, that good feeling going and listening to music or seeing a performance, whatever it is. So yeah, just feel a lot of gratitude after that, both performing and obviously for the album. It's been a long time coming, and I've just been itching to put it out for so long. And the pandemic really did put a damper on that, both, in terms of like being able to do things with people, to get things organized, and then also just financially. So it really needed things to sort of open up back up again and for the pandemic to cool off in order to be able to release it. So yeah, just a feeling of immense gratitude there.
So as far as putting this album together, talk to me a little bit about that and what you're hoping the listener gets from this.
In terms of putting it together and what I hope the listener gets out of it, it came to me as, obviously the title Two of Swords, it's a tarot card. There's all this tarot card information in the book, and that really started with a tarot card reading that I had received from my sister, in fact, and really resonated with me. And also, it was one that I just kept going back to and thinking about over and over. And it was one where I felt like this was just one of the cards in the reading that I had, but this card in particular felt so relevant to what we were all going through as a sort of a society, a world, and that sort of conflict, the perceived chaos, and also this like searching for some sort of peace within that. I think that anyone can sort of look. It could be in their personal life, it could be in their external life, it could be, sort of politics, what have you. There's all this division going on right now. Certainly, the political division, that one's pretty obvious, but even just, other things where you don't necessarily think of it as a two-sided issue. It can be, sometimes the division is between these things that are going on in yourself and what you want to do about it. Like we have this awful war in Ukraine or awful things happening all over the world, and you can kind of feel this struggle, like, what do I do about this? And you feel this conflict of like, okay, well, do I just give up hope completely and think like, well, there's nothing I can do about that? Or do I just donate every dollar in my bank account and go become an activist and completely change my life? And both of those are like kind of extreme options between just like completely like giving up and having this sense of like hopelessness and powerlessness versus I'm just going to completely change my life for this one thing. And I think Two of Swords is kind of urging the listener to take a step back for a second and maybe just like meditate and find a balance. Maybe there's something in between total hopelessness and total like radical change. Maybe that we can find that middle ground. And I think that that's something that is really hard to find. It's really hard to appreciate. And with all this stuff going on, be it politics or the pandemic or relationships, and I think it would be really valuable for all of us to sort of take a step back and meditate and think about where's that middle ground? Where can I find this sort of peaceful balance between these two opposites? And that's what the album is really about for me.
Yeah, sure. So let's go back a little bit in your timeline here to kind of figure out where you're at right now and how you got to find your voice. Talk to me a little bit about where you were born and raised and how not only music, but more specifically jazz became your focus.
Growing up, I was born and raised in Bloomington, Indiana, which is a pretty cool little town for where it is. Most people think Indiana, if you've never been there, you kind of write it off. But Bloomington is a really cool town, which brings in a lot of diversity through the university, at which my dad was a professor of Spanish and Catalan literature. There's like the Lotus Festival, which is about to happen there. It happens every year, which is a world music festival. They bring in acts from all over the world playing really diverse styles of music. Of course, I have the influences within my own home. So I've got my dad, who's Spanish, who's Catalan, and he brings his own sort of musical influences. He loved opera. He loved classical music. And then you have my mom, who loved all sorts of popular music from the 70s and 80s. You've got my brother and sister who are listening to like 90s kind of like emo rock, and like my brother is listening to hip hop, and Led Zeppelin was on. Like there's just all sorts of different music going on. I also, a big part of my family is out in Vermont. My uncle is Puerto Rican, so there was always a lot of Latin music happening in the family as well. So yeah, just an incredibly diverse amount of styles. I think that really influenced me. I think you can hear that in the CD. There's all this different types of music. And in addition to that, just artistic styles as well. You have my dad, who's a writer. My mom is an actor. So there is this definitely a theatrical element, a narrative element to what I do as well, and that really does come out of my upbringing and all those various influences that I had.
So talk to me a little bit about who some of your albums that you were listening to that influenced you, and maybe the first live jazz show that really blew you away.
Okay, some albums that really influenced me and a first live show that really blew me away. In terms of albums, it's hard to narrow down just a couple, but there are a few that I can think back to from my early childhood that just like played on repeat. One of those was the Buena Vista Social Club album. That was like my parents' dinner party album, and I must have listened. I can sing along to every solo on that CD. I know it from front to back. So that one was always on. Then we had this Louis Armstrong CD. I don't even think it was an original release. It was just like a greatest hits Louis Armstrong, which I absolutely love. And that was speaking back to your earlier question about what kind of got me into jazz, I think that was really the start of it for me, was Louis Armstrong. Just the soulfulness in his vocals, and the just everything is so tasty, and I love that music, and I still adore Louis Armstrong. And I think there were even some of the duets with Ella Fitzgerald on there, so that kind of got me started looking a little bit more forward in the music there as I started to check out more modern jazz. And speaking of which, there was this J.J. Johnson CD, which I also must have listened to 1,000 times and can sing every solo. It's J.J. Johnson live at the Village Vanguard. It's actually a much later recording of him. It's not one of those like original seminal Blue Note recordings that he did when he was 18 or whatever. This one was much later in his career, playing live at the Vanguard. They play a couple standards. They play some of his originals. But it's just phenomenal playing and recording, live recording, and that one had a big influence on me as well. In terms of live shows, man, it's hard to pin down. Yeah, that one's a tough one for me.
Well, I guess the first one that you remember that you thought that would be something that you would want to do, or really just kind of influenced the way that, any thinking that you wanted to be a professional musician?
Yeah, sure. I mean, to be honest, growing up in Bloomington, like I said, there are these diverse influences, but there's not a ton of live shows, and we didn't always go, like traveling to go see big concerts or anything like that. But I remember if I'm remembering from the youngest age, honestly, it's just being with my family in Vermont and listening to my uncle and his band jamming. And it was just always like a family thing. And there was something just like so warm and comforting about it. And it's just like we have a pretty big family, so it's kind of like a giant party. But just the feeling of everyone being so involved in the music, and the musicians are all listening to each other and playing off of each other, and everyone is having such a good time, and people are dancing, and just that sense of community, I think that the music creates is really what inspired me to want to play. That feeling of connection is really what drew me towards the music, and it's still something that I value really more than anything in the music, is to be able to connect with people and create that.
What about mentors? Who've been big influences on you, advice that still resonates with you to this day?
Absolutely. I mean, the big one, and he's all over this record in terms of his influence, is Wayne Wallace. And he's really the big one for me. There are a couple other ones. I took some lessons with Carl Lenthe, who's a classical trombonist, classical trombone professor at IU, and he was very influential just in terms of like his ideas about just like the quality of the music and sort of what to strive for. He was very inspiring to me. But in terms of just like the overall music and art and humanity, Wayne Wallace is my number one. And I went into IU not really knowing what was going on. I had been studying classical music. My dad was really sick, and I just kind of needed something to keep me going. So I went back to school, and jazz was something that I had done more of in high school. And I was like, well, I'll go back into this, see how I like it. And I met up with Wayne, and we started doing lessons. And I just started getting, like, he was just throwing these ideas at me, and I would just be so fascinated. And we really grew a connection through those lessons. And I kind of like became like attached to Wayne Wallace. And everyone at school would kind of notice. They were like, oh, you're always with Wayne. Like I just stuck to him like glue. Anytime that I had a class with him, I was walking out with him and talking with him. And if I had a lesson that was supposed to be 1 hour, inadvertently, it would end up going 2.5 hours. I mean, I think the shortest lesson we ever had was 1.5 hours. Normally they were like 2 hours plus, just because we couldn't stop talking. We always had something to investigate. We were all, and it wasn't just playing. It was like, oh, check out this band. Check out this Afro-Latin music from Peru or from Belize, or, check out this history that this really affected this music, was this conflict between these two peoples, or look at this law and how this affected the music. And that was something that really always attracted me to Wayne and struck me, was how he was so deep, and that it was more than just the notes for him, that there was all of this stuff behind the music to appreciate and to learn about the history, the culture, and how all of that affects the music as well. And also just on a human level, like we talked about, kind of how we are as humans and how that affects music, how that's all connected. And I think he was so deep, and that was something that I had really been craving, was to just go beyond just the notes. And he was really all about that. And so we developed this relationship, and I owe everything to that, really. And he's such he's an incredible guy. He's so intelligent. He's so well read and knowledgeable. Like, just going and hanging out with him, you learn about all this stuff, and it's just like, okay, well, I'm going to go home and spend hours on Wikipedia and YouTube researching all this stuff that you just threw at me. It's so cool. So yeah, I'm kind of rambling there, but I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah, and those older cats know what they're doing to a good degree. They're trying to keep that, passing the torch on, so to speak, to the younger generations. And now that you've been around and you've had the chance to be on a lot of stages and make music and do a lot of things, what do you want to teach younger musicians you get around? What's your big thing that you want them to understand about making music and being in this jazz business?
Absolutely. I mean, I think if I had to settle in on the main thing or things that I would want to teach to the next generation, it's kind of similar to what I learned from Wayne, is that the music goes deeper than the notes, and that there's this humanity to music, and if you lose that, you lose everything. And art in general, and this is something, I think the majority of art that I don't like is because I don't feel that human element there, and I just feel that is like the entire purpose of art. It is the most human thing. It is the reflection of humanity. It is humanity looking back at itself and trying to learn from itself. And if there's no humanity in the art, if it's just some sort of calculation or some strange little psychological, like, puzzle without, all the parts of humanity, I think something is lost. And that's something that I really, I gained from a short little period learning from Amjad Ali Khan. He's mentioned in the liner notes to the album. He's part of the reason that there's that Indian music and Trinity dance. He came to IU for about 6 weeks. He's an Indian sarod master, absolute legendary musician. That's what got me into Indian music. But anyhow, one of his big things, again, going beyond the notes, is that he would talk about his performances, and he'd say, every time I do a performance, I want there to be all of the emotions. I want there to be the whole depth of human experience in one of my concerts. It shouldn't just be all happy or all sad or all this one thing. That humanity is deeper than that, and it's more diverse than that, and that music should expound and celebrate that width of experience. So again, just coming from another source, that really resonated with me, that music should embrace the whole of our humanity, and I think that's really important. So that's one of the main things I would want to pass on to the next generation. And then the other thing that I would want to pass on is what I spoke about earlier, that it's all about the connection. It's about the connection that you make with your audience, and part of making that connection with the audience is also making the connection with yourself. And that's something that's so important. That's the thing that I love most about when I'm hearing new music, original music, is that I can really hear the artist in there, that I can hear their sound, their personality. What makes that music unique is the artist, and that it's worth taking the time to look at yourself, learn about yourself, kind of do that meditation or introspection or whatever it is. Don't always just be looking at the outside world. Look at you, look at yourself, and that to create music, that is absolutely crucial, is to bring yourself into the music. And that also helps foster that connection with other people too, because I think other people are looking for that. It kind of helps inspire other people to look at their own lives as well, which is beautiful.
Yeah. So every day you wake up, you have the opportunity to do what you love, to be a musician. What's your favorite part of being a professional musician? What do you like the best about it?
Favorite part of being a professional musician? I'd say, well, I think, going back to what I said, it's a connection with the audience, really just keeps me going. And then also taking that time to write. That is one of my favorite times. It's just me at home, or tinkering with notes, writing stuff down. I feel like I'm struggling the most when I don't have time to write, because it really is a time-consuming process, and not in that it's like you could write a song in 10 minutes, but it might have taken you 5 hours of sitting around doing nothing to have that idea have the space to come across. And it's just weird the way that writing works, I think. But when I do have the time to write, that is absolutely one of my favorite things, to just explore the music and kind of imagine the music. I'm a very imaginative person. I love writing and I love imagination. So that is one of the most important elements, and that's kind of like my when I'm alone kind of a thing. Although I do enjoy writing with other people, that can be a fun experience as well, and kind of improvising together, putting something. But then also just, playing with people and making that real connection in real time with the other musicians and also with the audience, and just sharing that beautiful moment, that special vibration that just uplifts people and brings them into a new universe almost. It transports you, and I think that's so beautiful and ecstatic, and that's one of the most rewarding parts of it.
So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but ultimately you live your life. Who do you think you are?
Great question. And I think that's something that the answer is always unfolding. I think we're always slowly unraveling this sort of puzzle and learning more about ourselves. But if I had to say, just sort of from the current moment, I'm another human. I'm not so different from everyone else. I experience pain and sadness and happiness and frustration and things that everyone experiences. I'm here to learn about myself and this world that we live in, and I'm here to support other people in doing that as well, and support other people in whatever way is healthy and sustainable for them, for all of us really, and to create that community. All going back to that, it's like I'm here to learn and to connect and to support, and we're all in this together.
Great answer, man. Yeah, hey, thank you for taking time out, man, to talk about the new album, live shows, your history of music. I appreciate it, man. Good luck with everything.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for asking those questions and talking to me. I absolutely love your questions, and it was really nice to talk to you, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this and your support of my music. It really means everything, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. I hope that you and your listeners enjoy it, get something out of it. Hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Bloomington, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Miro for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.